Hello, everyone. This is David Figueroa, and I am your host for the Cryptune Radio.
And I am Eduardo Limes.
In this podcast, we have a special guest, Osvaldo Mojica. He is our Chief Design Officer here at Cryptune. Osvaldo, it's a pleasure to have you give the listeners a sneak peek of the process that it took for the Cryptune magazine. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to you, David, and Eduardo for bringing me on. It's really a pleasure. I know that, everything is a process, and, what you guys are doing here to educate the public and the listeners is a great, platform that you guys are really putting together. And number one, I appreciate you guys bringing me along. But just to give you a little history about myself, I was born in Colombia, Latin America by blood.
Colombia.
Came here to the United States. We didn't make the cut in the FIFA, but anyway, 4 years. Give us another 4 years. We'll get better. But you know what? I came here just like any immigrant. Parents came with big goals and dreams. I actually was raised by my grandparents here. Okay. And, but I came here very young. Unlike some people that come at later stages, I came very young. And so a lot of my friends can't figure out my accent because, I don't really have one, So he said, but you're Spanish? And I said, yeah, I'm Spanish. But, I just don't have the accent. But I guess that's when I came very little. But I did it just like everybody else. I went to school. I went to high school. I was lucky enough to go to college. Not the best colleges in the world, but, my parents were able to do enough for an education and all that. And, I got into the design field. I've always had the talent to be artistic. I first started studying architecture. That was really like my first passion.
Wow.
And, but sure enough, I didn't really, follow it as a career. But then I got shortly into graphic design, fashion design, and I basically made my career out of being a fashion designer for more than 20, 25 years.
That's awesome.
I've had my own brand. I've worked for a few famous people, and, that's how I started, got into the field from the artistic point of view.
That's a deep resume.
Yes, we hope that through this explanation, you guys get to know our Chief Design Officer. He's putting a lot of hard work into this company, so we also thank you for that. I wanted to ask you, so how did you feel when the project Cryptune magazine was pretty much assigned to you?
Wow, good question, Eduardo. I got to tell you that I think I was, number one, just as shocked as everyone else, when it was announced, honestly, because it was never in our deck of cards. Right. It was always about building a utility token that people could go out and use it, make money by the value of buying shares and so on and so on. But a magazine never ever, was discussed at the initial when we launched the business.
Right.
But when I was assigned to it, number one, I was shocked, but I was, pleasantly delighted, to get the project. Once we break out our first issue, which is going to be very soon,
yes,
you'll see in my editor's note that for me, really what came to my mind it took me nothing but 5 minutes to get over the shock, accept the project, and say, okay, now I got a platform to speak on behalf of everybody here.
Right.
And the one thing that I did get excited about at the same time as I was surprised and shocked was the possibility of what the magazine could do. What we could put out there to people and the way in which we could do it. So for me, I found it as like, okay, now I have a challenge. How do we get through that challenge? But I think it's an awesome platform, just like what you guys are doing here. I'm sure that, your audience is going to keep growing and growing and growing.
Absolutely.
And really what I'm trying to do is basically the same thing with you guys, but from a visual standpoint, where someone can pick up our magazine and, learn and read and enjoy, what we've got to share with everybody.
You mentioned having a physical magazine, but also if I'm not mistaken, we are doing also a digital edition, right?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that we're noticing is that obviously the world of publication is not what it used to be anymore.
Right.
A lot of people don't really physically like to pick up or just don't do it anymore. And so we're kind of a company that, we want to work with people that are a little bit old school, a little bit like me, but at the same time, a generation like you guys, which are very in tune, connected to this whole technological world. And yes, we are also going to offer a online version as well.
That is amazing.
Okay. Can you please walk us through the process that you took to start the magazine?
Wow, that's another good question. You know what? I think that for me, David, was simple in the aspect that one of the things that we're looking to do with everything that we're putting together is obviously address the Latin community as a community that is very misinformed, miseducated, or just lack of education in terms of what's going on in technology and cryptocurrency, blockchain, all that stuff, which is what we're all about.
Right.
And so in my mind, the goal really with this magazine was to, number one, educate the public. Obviously, we're starting with the Latin community, but we're going to be everywhere too, every ethnicity, because at the end of the day, we're all one, in this world. But what my thought process was to really just go out there and educate people about what's going on in this whole technological space. I mean, specifically speaking about cryptocurrency, which is what we talk about here in our show. And for me, it was very important that in everything that we spoke about, whether it was a blockchain technology or cryptocurrency or any kind of business news, was just to basically use simple language that anybody can pick up. And after you've gone through 2-3 pages, you could actually sit there and say, wow, so that's a cryptocurrency. Like, I had no clue that that's what's about. And so for me, that was always the process to, okay, how can we educate the public so that they're more aware of what's going on, and not just to teach them, but that they can actually capitalize on it, whether it's to know how to buy the proper currency, how much of it to buy, why buy it. And so that was really the process for me of what it was all about. And, we hope that with every issue that we put out there, that's always what we're doing every single issue, educating the public, but also empowering, the public. Because once you have the education and the knowledge, then you're empowered to use it. Now, whether you use it or not, it's a different story. But I think those were, going hand in hand.
That's pretty good. I wanted to ask you, right? Since this is a massive project that came to you, did you end up getting help from anyone?
Yes, I did. One thing that people always have to realize is that no matter how big the project, how small or big it is, there's always somebody else other than the person who originates it. A magazine, I've never designed a magazine, number one. So that's where I found the project, challenging to me. I knew that the artistic side I could do with my hands, with my eyes closed, because that's just basically what I do.
Right.
But as soon as I got the project, I went in YouTube. Obviously, YouTube is the university of the world. It's there for free, so use it, learn how to use it.
I'm on that university too.
Well, hey, listen, you know what? It's there. That's one of the beautiful things about technology, right? That a lot of things are there. And I just went in and I dove in on how to create a magazine. And when I saw what the steps were, I mean, there's writers that are involved, graphic people who search the content. And so I knew that this was not going to be a solo project from day one. And yes, I did help. I had help from external people, some family members, some other people that are indirectly connected with Cryptune right now. And obviously I had some help from the creative team here. So yes, I did have help from some people. Yes.
I don't blame you. It's a massive project. One person cannot do it by himself, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. With that being said, what was the most difficult challenge that you came across, and how did you approach it, and how did you resolve it?
Wow, that's a really good question.
We gained some really good questions today for you, so because we're very excited. You know, we want to know, because we even though we work here together, but sometimes we had to be in our own office, you know, doing our thing, because we're also doing, you know, social media, podcasts, and all these different things. So that's why we have these great questions for you.
Well, you know what? I got to tell you that I think this question I'm going to keep asking myself every single month when we put a new issue, because, you know, because of the fact that, you know, physical publication is not what it used to, because again, just like you mentioned, everybody's mostly online right now. My goal, once I figure out that it was to educate and empower the public, then the next question is where the creative side came in. And so the first question that I asked myself was like, okay, so how different am I going to be from a Medium, a Wired, you know, MIT magazine, you know, those people or those publications that are already in the marketplace, you know, doing not necessarily but what we intended to do, but they're there and they have, you know, the audience already there. My first thing was, how do I come up to be a little bit different than them? And so for me, artistically, in terms of the art and the composition of the magazine, the graphics, that's where I knew that I could be different, because that's what I do. And so after looking at about maybe 10 magazines that were just some of the best in technology, I basically took what I thought was a good standard and just made it different so that Cryptune could have its own flavor, like, you know, as it's known.
That's right.
And really just to put a little spin on it. So if people were, you know, doing a specific font, I decided to use a font that not many magazines use, but it's still very creative. It's new, it's trending. And so that's where I thought I was a little different. So in some of the pages, you know, you're going to see a very clean, modern magazine coming from an art background. In art, one of the things that works really well is when you're very minimal, because then it becomes more difficult to make it differently. So it was in terms of where the pictures were placed, you know, whether they were on one side, that side. And so those are some of the elements artistically that I thought were going to set me or us a little different than from all the other stuff that's there. But at the same time, you can't ignore that there's some magazines that are just really good the way that they're set. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with copying one of the best. You just put your own little tweak on it, you know.
Right. You said it so, like, simple, so smooth, but I know you had a couple of headaches, and I know you had to sometimes scratch what you had and start over again or redesign something. Because we also deal with social media sometimes. Kevin and I, we have something like an image, and then we're like, nah, let's switch the font. So I can understand a little bit what you went through. I actually wanted to ask you, you ended up interviewing a successful entrepreneur, right?
Yes.
Could you please tell us about that experience? Like, first of all, what's his name, and, you know, what does he do? What industry is he in?
Sure. Now, you know, one of the things that, you know, we wanted to do with the magazine that was a little different, and again, this is, I guess, part two of, you know, the first question you just asked me, David, about how, you know, what was difficult is that one of the ideas that we had for the magazine, and we're going to keep doing every month, is to pick a person, a successful business person that, you know, has been in a specific industry that has had a good, you know, business record in terms of the successes that he or she has done. Again, we're starting with Latin American leaders that are not necessarily known just because nobody writes about us.
Right.
And so that's where we thought, you know, we would make president and, you know, build from there. all of us unanimously picked this gentleman by the name of Chelo Ramirez. Actually, that's not his actual name. Mm-hmm. It's hard to pronounce, so I'm not going to mess it up on the air. But he's known as Chelo to all his friends. He's a gentleman that, born in the Dominican Republic, emigrated just like me, just like you guys, and, with a dream, and, from very young, he wanted to be a business owner. He got involved with his brother, who had 2 or 3 restaurants that were named Caridad, that they were very famous about maybe 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And he got involved in the business helping his brother while he was going to St. Paul's University upstate. And he would come down every weekend to help his brother out in the restaurant business. And his brother was doing really well. When his brother decided to buy the 3rd restaurant, he said, listen, instead of buying the restaurants, why don't we come up with our own restaurant? And that's how he started with him. So his journey, from where he started all the way to he's been in the restaurant business for more than 25 years now.
That's impressive.
He's had a pretty unbelievable record. One of the questions that I asked him was, what have been some of your, let's say your worst catastrophic, venture? And what's interesting, he says, I've never had one. And I said, impossible. Every business person has one. And he says, no, you know what? I've never had one. I've only had restaurants that didn't do what I thought they were going to do. But I never had to close a restaurant due to mismanagement, not enough capital, or anything like that. So he's an interesting guy. He's an interesting gentleman, and he was definitely the first one chosen unanimously, to brace our covers. So we're gonna have a few more going, and obviously we're starting out with Latin leaders, but we're gonna have different cultures. I mean, whoever we think is appropriate to the magazine, the culture. If we can learn something from it, again, the concept or the motto is to educate and empower. So any business person that can come across our, magazine and that can do those 2 things, they'll be on the cover.
Now, I wanted to ask you, does Mr. Ramirez, does he operate in different states or just in New York?
As far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know, most of his businesses are here in New York. He does have, I believe, 1 or 2 businesses in the Dominican Republic also. Mm-hmm. He does have a few partners that they kind of co-share all the different businesses and everything, but the majority of his businesses are here in New York.
That's great. It's understandable, right? You're within the area. You don't want to have places all over you, right? So, David.
Yeah. I really think that the story that you're saying about Cello is very, very interesting, very intriguing, and I really want to read the magazine and see that interview. But with that being said, do you have any other entrepreneurs lined up, for the next magazines?
Yes, we do. Obviously, it's supposed to be a surprise, so I won't throw any names out.
I don't blame you for that one. No.
But yes, we do have a few people. We actually have one woman that's a candidate.
Oh, that's great.
Again,
equality.
Yes, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, especially in today's time, women are just as powerful as men, and in some cases even more powerful.
Absolutely.
And there would be nothing greater than to be able to eventually, whether it's this month or the next or whatever, have a woman, gracing the magazine as leaders. It's only gonna, stand out, in the community, and also for other women. I think it'd be a big inspiration. So, we do have some good people coming across for sure.
Very good to know.
Do you have could you at least give us a sneak peek of the industry that they're in? Because Mr. Cello, he's in the restaurant industry, right? So the food industry, but in your mind, as you're already, like you said, right, thinking not just the next issue, but even 2, 3, ahead. Like, what's in your mind? Like, do you want to cover like all the industries little by little, or you first want to focus on certain industries first?
No, honestly, Eduardo, it's not really about any industry at all. I think that at the end of the day, if the person is successful, it doesn't matter where they're from, really. Our goal is that, in the interview, is that if we feel that this person, again, could give something back, right, in terms of empowering, the readers, and give something back, educate the reader in some shape or form, is really what we're looking for. We're looking for people that are really just good role models, that when we put them in the magazine, we could say, wow, that's what we stand for. I'm sure there'll be leaders out there. I know leaders that are great, but I don't think they would be proper for our magazine based on what we want to do. So, no, the industry has nothing to do with it. It's really more about the individual, him or herself, that, that's how we'll choose it.
Right. Well, this interview definitely got real interesting. But I would like to ask you, like, how long did it take you to put this massive project together? Because we're saying a massive and it's big, but it was put on a certain time. Like, so we would like to know, like approximately how long did it take you to put this magazine together?
Well, good question. It got put together fairly quickly, because we didn't have a choice. I mean, it was all
running against time too.
Running against time, yes. But like I said, I don't think it would have been possible without help, of a few external people. We had some contributing, people on the articles and stuff like that. But we put it all together in about maybe 15, 16 days. We ran a little bit behind schedule, but for the most part, we got it done.
Yeah, that's great.
I also just wanted to quickly, I'm sorry to interrupt, David. I know you at the interview you were with one of our EVPs of communications, which is Joshua, right? You were also with our customer service relations, which Kevin Reyes handles that. So they were there with you on that day that you were interviewing Mr. Ramirez, right?
Yes.
Well, I just wanted to give him credit also, because they're also part of the team. I know Joshua, that day he really put himself out there throughout the whole day to make sure that, because we mentioned we were running against time, right? So I know that day it wasn't easy, but just like us, when we focus on a goal, we make sure that we execute it, right? We accomplish it. David, do you have anything else for him?
Yes. Real typical question. Where do you see Cryptune magazine in a year?
That's a great question.
Wow. Talking about getting ahead of yourself.
I mean, I know this is the first magazine, but going through the process and everything, do you think that this could last?
Could this be like the next Forbes magazine that people will talk about?
You know what? For me, again, in what you had asked me from the beginning, like what was one of my challenges, and the way that I explained it, for me, if Cryptune can do what we set out to do, which is, again, educate and empower, the business people that are going to grace the magazine are going to give their own take on business, life, and just success. I really feel that with the magazine, we can attract other successful people to want to be part of the community. If we could do that, this magazine could actually have its own legs to stand on, just with a business community that's going to help us, Cryptune, educate the majority of the public. If we could do that, or if they can help us to do that, and in turn, what we do for them is that we help them market their business. We help them network. advertisers, with actually people that are going to be coming through the magazine. If we can all network and help everybody in a year from now, it would be nice if this could be the next Forbes. Why not? I like Mr. Malcolm Forbes.
You actually mentioned advertising.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little information concerning that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We actually did have some companies put their businesses on our magazine so that we could also advertise for them.
Yes.
So that's something that we're also doing, right? We're also putting other businesses on our magazine.
Yes.
And we're giving them an opportunity to be exposed with us.
Absolutely. The goal with Cryptune, again, other than educating and empowering, is that we want to run the magazine like a typical magazine is run in terms from a business standpoint. Everything that we do here, is business driven because this is a business.
Right.
And so one of my goals is, to hopefully have Cryptune running like an individual, like a baby within, a whole group of babies here within the corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, our goal is to definitely have advertisers of good people, again, that they can expose their business, to them, to the community.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we don't have a huge circulation, but we're definitely poised to.
Mm-hmm.
And I must say that one of our advertisers was a beautiful car company by the name of BMW. They thought and they saw that we had potential for doing something good, and they're one of the first ones to step up to the plate. I also have to give credit to a business out there that's with one of the co-founders of the company, Yankee Pizza.
Yankee Pizza,
yeah,
yes.
Also put out a nice ad with us. So,
and what's the name of the owner of Yankee Pizza?
His name is Jose Dario Collado. Again, he's one of the co-founders, and also decided that would be another way that he could support the business.
Right.
And by the way, he did pay for the ad. So we're here to also help network businesses to, profit with their businesses.
What an amazing interview, David. What do you think?
It was a very, very informative. This is what the interview is for, so
right.
We could promote this magazine and push it out there.
Well, Cryptune wants to thank you for all your hard and smart work that you're implementing to our company to help us, rise to the top. We're visionaries, right? We're working towards, bringing Cryptune to a successful level where we'll be known as the technology company that we are. And we hope that you'll be able to join our future podcast because that's also one of our goals. We also want to bring special guests to our podcast. So today you were our special guest, and we want to say thank you for coming.
Well, listen, I think the feelings are mutual. Thank you for inviting me to the podcast. I think you guys are doing a great job. I think that the more the public gets informed about, who you guys are, as a team, as a duo, and Cryptune itself, I think we'll be doing what we're supposed to be doing and what we set out to do, which is to, again, educate and empower the public. If we can do that, we're all going to be happy campers.
I believe we can.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, just want to give a round of applause for all your work that you have done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.